All right, let's dive into a concept that so many people think they know inside and out, Salat. But what if that common understanding is just scratching the surface? We're going to dig into an argument based purely on a close reading of the text that could completely flip this core idea on its head. For millions and millions of people, when you say the word salat, it immediately brings to mind one thing, right? A very specific, structured 5 times a day ritual prayer. It's a huge part of daily life, a really deeply ingrained practice. And that's our baseline. That's where we're starting from. But, and this is a big but, the sources we're looking at pose a pretty radical question. They're asking, what happens if we just, for a second, set aside all the later traditions and look only at the original texts? What they suggest is that the word salat might actually mean something completely different. And that's exactly the idea we're going to unpack today.
So, where do you even begin with a claim like that? Well, the sources say you have to go right back to the very beginning, back to the word's actual linguistic roots.
Okay, so this is really the foundation of the whole argument. The Arabic root for salat is sad lam waw. And when you look at the linguistic analysis in these sources, its core meanings, they aren't about ritual at all. They're about things like connection, closeness, support, and alignment. That shift in meaning, it's absolutely crucial for everything that follows. I mean, this quote from the source material just lays it out so clearly. The argument is that linguistically, salat isn't originally a ritual prayer. Instead, it's an act of connection, attentiveness, and alignment with God's guidance. So think about that for a second. It's not about a set of actions you do, but a state of being you're in, a conscious, ongoing alignment. Okay, so if the root word means connection, what happens when you plug that meaning back into the key texts where it shows up? Well, according to these sources, it changes everything. Let's look at an example. In this verse, the verb form of salat, yusalli, is used to describe something God does for people. Now, the sources ask a really interesting question here. Does it really make sense to say that God prays to humans? Or does it make more sense, using that root meaning, that God aligns with them, connects with them, to bring them out of darkness and into light? See the difference? And here's another great example. In this passage, the prophet is told to perform salat for his community, and it's described as something that brings them reassurance. So again, is this about performing a ritual over them, or is it an instruction to connect with them, to offer support and solidarity that brings them peace? That's the interpretation being put forward. So this really puts the two models side by side, and you can see how different they are. On the one hand, you've got the traditional idea of prayer, fixed motions, specific times. It's a very personal act of worship. But on the other hand, you have this interpretation from the sources, Quranic salat as a conscious alignment, something that has a real ethical impact and is all about communal support. The whole purpose, the whole why, is just completely different. Now, a really crucial piece of this argument is not just what's in the text, but what's missing. The sources point out that even though the Quran repeatedly says to establish salat, it never actually gives a detailed blueprint for how to do it as a ritual. No step-by-step on motions, what to say, or specific times. And they argue that this silence, well, it speaks volumes. And this leads to a much, much bigger idea. In this interpretation, establishing salat isn't just a personal thing you do in a quiet corner. It becomes this massive communal project. It's directly tied to getting out there and taking positive action in the world, working for reform, fighting for social justice, and actively trying to build a better community. It's an active, ethical mission. Okay, that's the theory. But if salat is really about this deep connection and social action, what does that actually look like for us, right here, right now? Well, the sources take this idea and apply it directly to our modern lives. In today's world, the sources suggest we should think of salat as, basically, a process of education. Yeah, education. It's all about seeking knowledge, seeking enlightenment, connecting with the guidance that's all around us, whether you call it spiritual or secular, all with the goal of raising our understanding and becoming better people. So what does that look like in practice? Well, these sources give some really interesting modern examples. They say salat could be a lesson you're taking in a classroom. It could be a deep dive with an online study group. It could be you, by yourself, just really getting into a thought-provoking book. Heck, it could even be that quiet moment of just checking in and having an honest conversation with your own inner script. And all of this leaves us with a final, really powerful question that kind of gets to the heart of this whole reinterpretation. If you follow this text-based reading, the focus totally shifts. The question isn't how do I perform a ritual correctly anymore. Instead, it becomes this much bigger, lifelong question. How do I live in a state of constant conscious alignment with guidance? And maybe just as important, how do I help my community do the same? Definitely something to think about.